Okay, I think we have most of our panelists here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start. So hello everyone, welcome to the USC Industry Insights AI and Machine Learning panel. We're excited to have you all here and gain insights from our wonderful panelists and industry experts. So we have a packed agenda. I'm gonna go ahead and dive in. So first of all, we'll have introductions by the panelists, and then after that, we will have a formal Q&A session led by me. After that, this will be the student Q&A question answer session. So you will have a chance to ask your own questions. And finally, we will move on to breakout rooms for more personalized interactions with the panelists. So yeah, so let's get started. Yeah, so these are our wonderful panelists. So if you could go through the order in which your names appear and then introduce yourselves briefly, a little bit about your company, what you're working on, and any interest that you have. Yeah. Brad, if you would like to start us off.
Certainly. Thank you, everybody, for having us, and we're really excited to be here. My name is Brad Hurwitz. I'm the CEO and Chief Product Officer of Prosperous Incorporated. We provide purpose-built financial software to help military family members achieve their financial goals. One of the things that we're seeing, and we'll get into this a little bit more, is just the ability that AI has to kind of unlock capabilities for people in their lives, and it's something that's been really, I'm really passionate about. So I'm excited to share with all of you and learn from all of you today, but also get some thoughts from our panelists as well. I think one of the things that probably keeps me busy these days is I've got an 18-month-old daughter at home, so she's one of my interests, and I think outside of that, anything USC related is also kind of high on the mark. So sorry to see us lose to Michigan, but still pulling for USC Michigan USC football any chance we get.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think Brad, John can take off from here.
Yes, thank you so much, Ahona. So fight on, Trojans. Thank you everybody for being here tonight, for having all of us panelists here. We're probably going to learn more from you than you might have a chance to learn from any of us, kind of to Brad's point. I'm John, and I spent about 25 years leading some of the larger talent teams at Apple and Amazon, and that happened to include building some of the first AI and machine learning teams at those small mom and pop companies. That led to me going and joining a company called SoundHound and taking them public, and they are a voice AI company. And that leads to now Disruptor Ventures. What you see on the screen right there, what we do is we help to educate executives and boards in dispelling the fear of AI and understanding how this unprecedented moment of access can be a time that we create equity in our society as opposed to seeing it further distributed into the hands of the wealthy, essentially. I didn't realize that having an 18-month-old kid was like a requirement for being here, but apparently it is, Brad, because I share that with you. Mine is a little chaos machine named Lexi, who is the center of my whole universe, and is just the cutest little being in the entire world. I have the incredible privilege to serve on the board for the MBV program here at USC, which is the Master's of Business for Veterans, which is a program I could not believe in more completely. And yeah, just like Brad, I'm anything red and gold, sign me up, including every webinar, every chance that we can to come together and to make the Trojan family a thing. So I'm just so pumped to be here. Thank you, Alana.
Yeah, thank you so much. Josie, if you want to take it from here.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for having me. So, my name is Josie Garcia. I work as a product manager at PwC. My background is primarily in marketing and advertising technology and analytics. So, I work on a couple of different teams at PwC, again, touching marketing analytics products or internal data engineering solutions. So, yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And then Suchusmita, if you'd like to go next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me as well. I'm a senior data scientist here at NVIDIA. I work with in the solution architecture organization, and we work primarily with partners and customers to build their generative AI applications. So that's what I primarily do. And And yeah, really happy to be here and get more insights from the rest of the amazing panelists.
Yeah, same. And then last but not the least, we have Chris.
Hey, really grateful to be here. So I work at Northrop, where I work on classified and non-classified projects across the sector. So I work on planes like F-35, Trident, E-2D, and some next-gen fighters that you just can't talk about in this room. At a really simple level, Northrop's been around for a really long time. And so some of the interesting ways that we're using AI is to integrate a lot of the old processes that were really manually done to automate some of those. So really stoked to talk about that later in this panel. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. We are gonna get started with the question and answers now. So I have a few questions prepared for individual panelists, but if you would like to chime in any of the questions, please feel free to chime in. So Josie, if you won't mind starting us off, what do you see as the biggest challenge and rewards of working in the AI and machine learning industry today, both from a technical and business standpoint?
Yeah, so I'm sure everyone on this panel can agree, but the hardest thing is just staying on top of the changes. Like I think back to like 6 months ago where it was like, this one thing was the new cool thing and it's just changed significantly since then. So that's really hard to keep on top of and making sure like I know all the newest technologies that people are using. But then on the flip side, that's actually kind of the most rewarding part because my brain really craves new things and learning new situations, new things to learn, and so it just creates like a really fun environment for me to be a part of. And I can only speak mostly to the business side since I was a business major. I'm like a product manager. I really like solving new problems all the time. So yeah, that's what I really enjoy about it.
Yeah, thank you. So that was a really good perspective from like the business area of things. If anyone would like to chime in about a little bit about the technical aspect, if not, we can move on to the next question. Okay. So like I know, Josie mentioned one of the challenges can be staying ahead of rapid technological advancements. So it brings me to my next question for Brad. How do you think AI will shape industries over the next 10 to 15 years? And what opportunities does this create for young professionals entering the field?
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely great question, and I'm gonna give a strong signal of exactly how old I am. I see some parallels with how AI is evolving right now that remind me of when I was much younger and the internet was just becoming a thing. Where the technology was evolving so quickly that not only was it hard to stay on top of, but the user of the technology had to be trained to kind of catch up with it. I'm seeing a strong parallel there, and I'd welcome my other panelists to kind of share their perspective. That one of the things that's really hard when we're passionate developers of new technology is making sure that the users are kind of like familiar with what we're trying to do in a new way. When you have things like e-commerce that we all take for granted today, 30 years ago, that was not a common way to go shopping. And so in addition to just having the low friction and the ability to just purchase things and have them delivered on your door, you had to remind people that, hey, you don't have to get in your car to go shopping. You don't have to go kind of walk around, 3rd Street Promenade over in Santa Monica. You can just pull up this computer right here. And so there's a large amount of kind of adoption that takes place, and I do see us kind of going through that right now, and would welcome kind of like my other panelists, kind of what your take is on that, what you see, what you agree with, what you disagree with there.
Yeah. So any other panelists would like to add anything here?
Yep, I agree. I agree with Brad a lot. Just keeping up with the technological advancements every day is difficult, but I agree with Josie in that relation as well. That's what keeps it exciting as well. And like for example, like 3 years back or 4 years back, data science had a very different ideology, different skill sets, and everything. And it's evolving into generative AI, where it's not just data science; it's data science plus plus. You need to understand a lot of applications, microservices, a lot of things. So yeah, definitely agree to that point as well.
I would add the caveat of what an exciting time to know nothing. I mean, the learning curve, it's changing so rapidly that you could wake up a subject matter expert and go to bed a novice. And if that could either be terrifying or it could be elating. And I tend to index on the second of those two things because you knowing 1% more than the person next to you, which you probably do, not just because you're at USC, but because you're here talking about AI right now, you're gaining so much of this information that's growing at this geometric rate that just staying ahead of how you use it in your everyday life, honestly, I think gives you an incredible edge in any application that you might have outside of the hyper technical, right? For the CS, actual ML AI students here, maybe that's not as true, but for anybody who's here outside of that deeply technical space, in business, entertainment, in any of those others, in any non-deeply technical space, especially the creative, my gosh, the one trick that you know might differentiate you in ways you can barely imagine in private sector.
Yeah, I agree. So kind of going off your last response, John, would you say like for students who are looking for a career in AI and machine learning, what foundational skills or experience do you recommend that they focus on?
So having an actual, even rudimentary technical understanding of what's going on with AI right now, I think is incredibly formative. Unfortunately, that's probably table stakes to be in this call right now. But even if it's not, that shouldn't probably feel too terrifying because you're a 20-hour free Google course on Udemy away from being pretty dangerous, pretty savvy when it comes to this stuff. And if this happens to be the actual baseline, the foundation of your education, then clearly you're light years ahead of everyone else. But really, I think that's more like understanding the grammar of a language versus being able to write the poetry of that language. And you don't necessarily need to be an expert grammarian in order to string together some pretty phenomenally meaningful words. It just might help you in understanding the syntax and how that actually goes together. But I guess to frame that up a little bit, having at least a rudimentary understanding of what's going on with specifically machine learning because of how the actual learning itself is informing how true generative and now general AI is coming about, I think that's super important. But to flip that around to everyday application, perhaps for even the non-technical folks in the room, there's a lot of, I believe, value in simply setting aside time intentionally and meaningfully in both your personal life and your professional life to very specifically find and seek out new AI tools and to find ways to implement those tools in your life. One, I don't know if going all the way down to specific recommendations, I promise I'm not a paid partner of any of these entities. Obviously, we probably all have a subscription to OpenAI, their various products. If you aren't already using Make.com, understanding automation and understanding how you can actually power AI agents, especially as context windows and actual speech to action is becoming a real thing now. Being able to not just understand how AI works in terms of the motors, the engine behind under the hood, but also really how every single piece of the machine can work together. That's why I play with Make.com and I try to automate everything. If I have to do something more than once, I'm going to try to find a way to automate it on Make.com. And about half the time it works. The other half of the time it results in beautiful chaos, but at least half the time it's a lot of fun. But I strongly recommend that as a very practical application.
Yeah, that sounds really good. So kind of from that, I wanted to ask Suchesmita, because you're working directly with generative AI, from your perspective, how do you see AI transforming your specific industry in the coming years? And are there like any emerging trends or technologies that particularly excite you?
Sure. Yeah. So to answer the first part, yes, there is a lot of exciting advancements that are recently getting more and more traction in our space. And I'm not talking specific to any industry; it's in general generative AI enterprise business. It can be like multimodal AI, capable of processing, text data, image data, video data, audio data, all of that. With even like OpenAI, Omni coming into the amazing models. I think another trend, which I think John briefly mentioned, was the agentic AI systems, agentic AI workflows. which help learning efficiently from even limited data and orchestrating microservices and function callings to serve multiple models for inference. These developments have been really exciting in the more recent times. I think another exciting area is the digital human technology in the sense of like the avatar side of things. And we have been building up the LLMs and the text backends of that, the RAG-based chatbots, making them better, making them more language-like. But more recently, we are seeing more customers and more industry folks asking for the need of, having a human or a digital human face to it. So in terms of industries and sectors, I think this goes across all of the industries. From changing your customer service experience to your retail shopping experience to even healthcare assessment or support and all of that. So definitely all over the place.
So
Um,
just
I,
do you mind if I share like a quick example that from my own life of just how incredibly real what you just said is in my lived experience? So my wife is a palliative care doctor, and so she takes care of people at the end of their lives. And it is truly heartbreaking to see how many people are at the loneliest at the very end. And it is incredible to see the role of chatbots, especially when people have family members who are perhaps, I'm not going to use the word younger, I'm going to use the word more eager to learn, perhaps having more neuroplasticity and willingness to use it. But the ability to connect people, even with just like a simple GPT that you build to help inspire somebody to talk, it's having real, and I'm not kidding, measurable life expectation and lifespan expansion effects on people at the end of their lives. And it's solving for loneliness in ways that we can't even imagine already.
Totally agree.
that was very insightful. Thank you. Does any other panelists want to add a little bit about any of the emerging trends in AI that you're personally excited for?
I think one of the trends that I'm stoked about, kind of going off what John was saying, is before in my company, there'd be like a data scientist and then some business expert, and some business expert or leadership would pass the requirements to this data scientist for this more technical person. And now we're seeing with like Claude and some of this Cursor, like anyone can kind of build out like a dashboard, or anyone can write SQL or Python or whatever you're writing. And so I think like if anything, people in my company are becoming more technical in the actual engineering or the actual business knowledge of the company. And we're moving away from like this separation between data scientist and leadership. Those are becoming one really senior role, which is just like, you are now a product manager, and that's what you do for work.
Yeah, I think Chris just nailed it there. And I was seeing this prior to starting this company, but we've leaned into it very heavily at Prosperous, where analysis has become kind of like everybody's job. And when you have tools like a Chat GPT, for example, you can rely on that to help extract some of those trends and rely on those tools almost like they're an employee that can go do several different things for you. Now it has limitations right now, but that's quickly going to emerge. And so you do have to check their homework a little bit. So I use ChatGPT for everything from analysis to database, like you were talking about, data extraction, to a lot of legal work, actually. Like I mentioned, you have to check its homework because it's like a really smart 4-year-old in that respect. But being able to do that allows you to kind of scale yourself in an organization in a way that a lot of people can't. Our chief technology officer relies on GPTs quite frequently to develop code, and it's kind of like having 3 or 4 junior coders working for him, where he can just integrate the code, go through some updates on it, and do the cleanup. So being able to rely on AI tools to help you become even more productive, I think is something that I'm excited about seeing. Just as someone who's building their own company.
Yeah, I could add to all of this. As a product manager that's not technical, I constantly they'll throw something at me like, we're using this new technology. I'm like, what is this? I asked ChatGPT, please explain it to me like a 5-year-old. And that's how I'm learning all the technologies coming from a non-technical background. Obviously, I do check my homework as well, but at least it gives me a good baseline to start from. So I'm like a real life application to what everyone is saying right now.
Yeah, I think I agree. Even as a student, I think we do end up using it a lot, even though like we obviously have to go ahead and like do our homeworks. But so yeah, speaking of trends in the industry, Chris, I wanted to ask you what qualities or experiences you look for in ideal candidates for internships or entry-level positions, specifically in your company or in this sector.
Yeah, great question. So I think really there's two paths, which is you're going really, really technical and you're actually building some of these models, or you're kind of someone who's technical, non-technical, like what we were just talking about. From a really technical background, from my team really looks at questions and proof of work. So we want to show, or we want to see that you've actually done some sort of investigation. And what that means is like answering questions like, how good is ChatGPT 4 better than ChatGPT 3? Like we hear it's better, has a better ELO, prove it to us. What does that look like in terms of prompting? Or like how does it change in terms of lengthening the context window and adding different lengths of input? And so those are some of the more technical questions that we can get into like garbage and stuff like that, of what that looks like on a technical level. And then a non-technical level, my team really is just looking at from a business perspective, like why are you building it, and if there's some sort of like real life users. So again, anyone can build a side project in a weekend now. We want to see that your side project has some sort of user base or it has some sort of hard data. A lot of the projects that I work on are different from some of the clean data that we had at USC. So we're dealing with like petabytes of data and it's really complex data forms rather than just like some of the projects that I had where we're tens of thousands of records here. So we're just looking for some side projects that are really core concept and then technical or non-technical, depending on the path you want.
Yeah, thank you for the insight. I know we have like other companies representatives here, so if you'd like to chime in and talk a little bit about the things you look for in an intern or like a new grad joining, trying to join for a job. If not, we can move on to the next questions. So I had a more specific question for John. I know we have talked about it before that you've worked with your team to provide gaming access to millions of hospitalized children worldwide. So how do you see AI enhancing these experiences? Because you've already worked on it, especially in developing personalized or more adaptive games that like meet the unique needs of these children.
Yeah, so there's, and I'm really grateful for you for asking this question because not only do I shamelessly talk about our nonprofit, gamesforlove.org, we put video games in children's hospitals, we are looking for volunteers, and USC has the best games program in the world, believe it or not. So anybody interested, please come on down. So question being, how is AI sort of moving the needle on that experience, maybe even just for those kids right there? I think two things come to mind. One is sort of ethical and socially aligned deployment of AI. Like, are we using, are we Austin Powers, or are we Dr. Evil on this thing, right? And that's for anybody in the outside of the early 2000s era, that's a movie about, it's a funny James Bond-esque parody. But the idea is, are we using what we're making for good or for evil, or just for some joke in the middle, right? I would say that when you look at the way that specifically hospitalized kids, and let's localize this to kids in burn units and kids in cancer wards, with an average stay of about 6 months in a typically immunocompromised environment, which means you're not out in the field, you're not running around with your friends, you're probably not even able to see your family, you might not even have physical interaction with nursing staff or doctors. So you're in a pretty lonely place, right? So again, this kind of goes back to pretty similar commentary to earlier, that palliative statement, which is many of the games that are evolving now. The AI in video games has always been pretty good. If you've played Grand Theft Auto, if you've played StarCraft, any of these games over the years, there's always been AI that's like around, but it's generally pretty scripted. Anybody who actually plays games, Skyrim is a great example of a game where you had some NPC intelligence. It was pretty great for its day. But now you actually have generative AI powering the majority of the NPCs, non-player characters, in a lot of these games, which means that a kid could be playing, even without an internet connection, could be playing and actually having fairly meaningful interactions in a socially engaging environment that might be the first time in a while that they've been able to really have, and I know how silly this might sound, real conversation. Real conversation. Real in the sense that it's meaningful. I think when we expand this out, we think about how this applies on a sort of broader scale, this same application, this same way that kids are getting access to conversation and also meaningful play, it also applies when we zoom even further out to how we as individuals are represented in virtual worlds, where these systems are getting better and better and better at representing us, not just necessarily in how we look. That's probably where we go first. Like, is there an avatar that looks like me, that has my skin tone, that has my eye tone, shape, the shape of my body, the way that I walk? Am I represented visually? But also, you know, typically speaking, there's a lot of bias in a lot of systems when it comes to how they're trained, even language training. Remember early face recognition and early Siri had a real problem with accents and faces with a lot of melanin? That's a really powerful example of how models that aren't trained correctly can not reflect people as well. Now it's getting faster, smarter, and better. I'm particularly excited to hear from our other panelists who actually have a deeper understanding of how this stuff actually works and can actually validate or refute what I'm saying, that it's getting better. But certainly it seems to be getting to be a more fair and more equitable access to being represented in virtual worlds because of AI.
Yeah, that was really insightful. Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to ask Chris a little bit about how AI and machine learning are currently being leveraged in aerospace and defense at Northrop Grumman. Because I think a lot of our students who end up going into defense, I'm an electrical and computer engineering major, and I know a lot of my peers who have gone into like defense companies for internships. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we're using we're using AI in defense in really interesting ways. Some of the projects that we're working on is like a lot of the autonomous vehicles and swarming technologies within those. So similar to like Anduril or similar to Lattice, we are working on stuff like that. We just released Manta Ray a couple of months ago, which is one of our autonomous vehicles that does like underwater stealth, which is really exciting. And then we use a lot of AI with an F-35 and B-21, which I unfortunately can't talk about. But we're using really exciting use cases. It's really complicated work because these are really complicated systems. And so it's really cutting edge. On a more practical level, some of the projects that I can talk about is in terms of like large amounts of data, we use it to examine like text or defects. So in terms of like quality of build and different engineering principles, we're using that to like really verify and test some of our build processes. But yeah, any specific questions, I'm kind of happy to dive in. But those are just some really basic use cases on how we're pioneering AI at Northrop.
Yeah, thank you. For any other specific questions, we will have our Q&A session shortly. So I hope you're holding on to your questions. And for now, I wanted to ask Brad, as the founder of Prosperous, what inspired you to integrate AI into your business model, and what challenges have you encountered in the implementation?
Yeah, great question. I think the inspiration for us, we were using, so prior to founding Prosperous, I was at Credit Karma for a number of years. And fantastic company. We were trying our hardest to find ways to deploy AI in a way that would be helpful. But what we saw was kind of what I alluded to a little bit earlier, where there's a bit of a lag in terms of what people are trying to solve and trust AI enough. So, you know, what I'm seeing kind of integrate into ours, instead of having a Inge team build out an AI kind of a chatbot for us, just so that we can say we have an AI tool. I'm actually working directly with the users on what are the problems that are most pressing for you. Is it budgeting? Is it real-time expense monitoring? Is it anticipating and forecasting your income or what your investments might look like? And if there's a way that I can rely on AI to do that more effectively for you than a traditional solution, what I'm finding is I kind of like we're having a lot of success there with kind of sneaking in AI solutions where it can be more effective, and just making sure that you're building the best product out there. And AI is one, arrow in the quiver, that, so to speak, that we have. So the inspiration has been all of the things that this panel has talked about, all of the groundbreaking solutions that are coming to market right now. But we're having to do it in a way that we have to really empathize with where our users are, that they may not be that sophisticated, and they may not have a high degree of trust for these kind of technologies yet, in which case we'll have to kind of like sneak them in there a little bit. But those are some of the inspirations that I've had. Again, our product is in kind of the finance space, so there's lots that we can do to just make finance easier for people. And if we can do that in a way that they feel empowered versus like they're having to be forced into using a technology that they don't really get yet, we're having to find a way that we can kind of meet them where they are.
No. Thank you so much for sharing that. My next question would be to Suchismita. I know that you're working for NVIDIA, and NVIDIA is at the forefront of AI innovation right now. So can you talk a little bit about your role specifically, or a project that you worked on in developing generative AI?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So, like I mentioned, we work across not universities, across industries. So, one of the use cases, Brad mentioned about finance use case. We have been working with a lot of customers in that space as well. I can talk about one specific example of it's public news as well. We worked closely with BlackRock on implementing a graph-based RAG workflow. So the knowledge base articles was on, I think, financial stock prices and also live stream data. I'm not exactly remembering what data it was, but the idea was, what our team did was work with their engineers and implement the graph RAG workflow. So that's kind of one of the examples of more recent work. We have been also working with in the retail space. I did mention about how it's kind of revolutionizing the retail shopping experience and things like that. So having an avatar front end to your RAG chatbot, and the RAG is kind of trained on your product, so it's quite well versed in all of your product specifications and is able to recommend similar products, kind of like Amazon does and everything. So those are kind of some of the use cases that we are seeing a lot with customers.
Yeah, thank you. So similarly, I know, Josie, as a product manager at PwC, you have to work with a lot of projects, and I'm sure some of them are related to AI. So how do you see AI transforming the client services, and what are the key considerations when integrating AI into existing products? And if you'd like to share about a specific project that you worked on, that would be great too.
Yeah, I'll break it up into a couple of sections. So the role that I primarily focus on is like internal products that help internal users. So for example, I know previous people have mentioned like RAG tools, where we have chatbots that kind of help inform so that we can increase our efficiency. So that was the project. And then your question was about how it's going to change client services, I believe. Yeah. So again, I don't work in client services specifically directly, but I can imagine kind of what I said earlier, that it'll expedite like how fast people learn, especially given that a lot of the times there's like so many industries, different topics, again, the sky's the limit of like topics. So I imagine AI will play a huge role on people that are in those roles. But just like any role, right? You just leverage it to be able to expand your knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. I guess this would be my last question to all the panelists. If you could offer one piece of advice, or it can be more than one, to someone looking to start a career in AI and machine learning, what would that be?
I can start
Yeah,
first.
you can go. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm going to give a token business answer, but I think a lot of the times, well, at least when I was in college, it wasn't like communication wasn't emphasized, and I feel like that's such a like powerful thing to really focus on learning, because I think especially once you get into like the workforce and you're working with all sorts of different types of people, I think communication, learning how to communicate well your ideas, your thoughts, calling things out is going to be like your special weapon once you get into the field. Again, it probably could apply to anything, but I think specifically in AI, when things are moving so fast and everyone has ideas, you want to make sure that you're communicating that effectively.
I'd probably build on what Josie has said. I think if you're looking for some real tactical advice, something you can do right now is reaching out to any one of us and asking to do a coffee chat. There's one thing that AI will never be able to do, and that is to sit across the table from somebody and buy them coffee. So I think that that's something that really differentiates people, and that human element will become more differentiated in a world that is continuously disrupted in AI, in a good way. So it'll make you stand out.
Brad, my advice is basically the same. Identify what makes you better as a human and be the best at that thing. So whether that's your creative pursuits or really finding ways to connect continuous learning with foundational understanding through internships, through projects, through being part of open source work that's out there right now, getting your name out there, particularly in a world where discovery algorithms are becoming so powerful that we're not far away from being able to look at somebody, have facial recognition, pull up the top 5 Google results on them and give them a summary of who you are just based on your face. So having your name attached to some really powerful stuff is probably a good idea right now. And in terms of really tactical, if you want to get real specific, I'm a huge proponent for joining Toastmasters International. It's a nonprofit that helps you in a very structured, very formulaic way that anybody can adapt to really master basic speaking and go all the way up to becoming kind of world champion of speaking. So as far as tactical goes, that would be my advice and something to do to master communication.
Love Toastmasters. I'm going to echo everyone's advice, and I think communication is huge. I think one of the most underrated things you can do in college at USC is send cold emails. People are so receptive. And when I was at USC, I got into some crazy situations and I met with some crazy people just because I would send an email. So if you want to send one, just ping me on LinkedIn and we can help draft the message.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that, since Chris also recommended LinkedIn. So LinkedIn presents, and I think I've seen that grow as well. And we also hire and recruit a lot of talent with their LinkedIn presence. If you're just, sharing learnings from your project, from one of the courses you took or anything, but it just shows how you have a grasp of your technical skills, your technical knowledge, and you're willing to share it, plus with the communication skills, of course. So definitely that's one thing that I will definitely go back and do more of if I could. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. That's all like really good advice. I think now we're gonna open the floor to questions from the audience. So please drop your questions in the chat or raise your hand using the Zoom feature, and I'll call on you. We will be giving priorities to students with cameras on and hands raised. So yeah. If there aren't any questions, I do have a few more questions that I'd like to ask. So kind of a follow-up to my previous question would be, what are some of the networking strategies that work for you? And could you what are the strategies that you would suggest for people who are starting out right now and are not really well versed in how to network?
I can start with LinkedIn, since we mentioned it again, like plus cold emails. I think LinkedIn reach out emails are also have worked for me in the past as well. That is a good way to connect with potential hiring managers or potential mentors, and also conferences and meetups have been a good place for networking as well, like just connecting with like-minded people, just sharing what they're working on, or what skills they're using, what technologies they're using. That's also a really good way of networking. I'm not sure if people know about the Grace Hopper Conference. I think that has been a really phenomenal place for, especially for women in tech, to network and get like exposure to more opportunities and things like that. So I think those will be some of my insights for networking for sure.
I think I'd probably add
And
on to that. I think one thing that tends to work pretty well for me is cold emails are becoming more effective than LinkedIn, because people get spammed on LinkedIn from a whole bunch of stuff. Subject line: USC student seeking your advice. Body of the email: one sentence explanation of who you are and what you want to learn about from me. And then so it's just 2 sentences. You're looking at an email that has less than 50 words in it. And you can get that out. That's an easy one for anybody to read that's really, really busy. And it's really easy for me to prioritize because I know what you're looking for. And it makes it a whole lot. You can take all the smoke and mirrors out of networking that you're just looking for some advice, kind of buy a coffee or just set up a 20-minute Zoom call with you. The end of the call, just say, is there anybody else you'd recommend I talk to? And kind of keeping it pretty simple and keeping it human.
That's insanely good advice. It's exactly what I did. I also think for some companies or some firms that you really want to work at, if you provide a little bit of free labor, or say, hey, I built this out and this is something that might be useful or some value add, I think that could go a really long way in distinguishing you from the rest of the other emails that they get.
oh yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say that shockingly little has changed in 25 years of running some of the bigger hiring teams at the largest companies in the world. And the power of networking is something that I think, especially if you happen to come from a family or a country or a culture where networking and just getting out there and being social and being almost shameless in your willingness to send USC students seeking mentoring or seeking help, that is not an easy message for many to send. And there might be people on this call right now hearing that cringing, saying like, oh my, I would rather step on a Lego barefoot than do that. Well, the power of doing that, just know that there is someone doing that. And that person is probably the one who's going to get the job if you don't. And it should be you. And honestly, like, look, you're going to USC. This is not free education for most of us. You're paying a premium for a network. The education's phenomenal, but you're paying for a network, y'all. And so use that Trojan family. That is arguably the greatest benefit that we have as Trojans. And if you're not using it, well, then you might as well go to UCLA, right? Is what I'm saying. You might as well be a Bruin.
I'm gonna add. Oh, go ahead. I'm gonna add to that and say that as an introvert, like in college, when I got older, I shifted to thinking, because I actually, like, for example, I know everyone on this panel, you want to help because you've been in those shoes. So for all the introverts on this call, which I'm sure there are some, if not a lot, like, shoot your shot, because you just never know who's like really willing to help, and they empathize with how you feel like right now. I know as a college student had zero connection, so I'm more than happy and willing to answer any questions and give you tips, because I know the struggle, and I think a lot of us do too on this call. So just know that there are people out there that are willing to help sometimes. You might not get all your answers, but some of them will answer.
Yeah, the framework that I found useful is that everybody on this call wants to build financial capital at some point in their life, right? I want to have a bank account that goes up and not down. But a lot of people don't think about the relationships that they build, that network value that John and Josie had just mentioned too, in terms of social capital. The difference is that, like, as you build those relationships over time, even if they can't help you out right now, that doesn't go down in value. My stock portfolio, on the other hand, it does go down in value. So, by establishing that now, it always grows, and you always kind of develop it over time. And I see this a lot with people who are looking to build businesses, is they get so focused on financial capital. I got to go fundraise. Well, most of the time, no, you don't. If you invest heavily on the relationships that you have, that's a different type of capital that only the people on this call are going to have. So if you think of it as just like an investment in your future self in ways that you can build genuine relationships with other people, that in that currently building a business from scratch right now, I can tell you that that's far more valuable than just kind of like the money on the side. And I found that framing is sometimes helpful when people may be more introverted or not comfortable with the networking environment. If you think of it as, hey, I'm just building my social capital up over time, that might be something that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much. Looks like we have some questions. So I think Kevin raised his hand first. So Kevin, go ahead.
Hello. So yeah, I just had a quick question. I was just wondering what kind of skills are expected to employers of like underclassmen, like freshmen, sophomore students looking for experience with companies. Because I personally am like very new to coding and like technology as like a whole. So I'm just thinking of like what should I prioritize to like kind of get more ahead per se?
I can take that. So, as I think the first thing you should do is gain more experience. Like I think a lot this was discussed by some other panelists as well. Like we need to see more projects, right? Like show me what you can do, not specifically that you don't need to be a coding ninja. Like we have ChatGPT coding away as well. So, but your problem solving skills and even like working on projects which solve an industry use case or solve an industry problem, like a real world use case. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but I think that's one thing to be able to learn the skills and also showcase. Like that can be part of your portfolio, right? It can be part of your GitHub portfolio that, okay, I built this or something like that. So understanding the learnings and your challenges through it and like developing that problem solving skill, I think that would go a long way. Hope that answered it.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have another question. Arseni, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yes, hello everyone. I have a question to all panelists. How did your academic background and early career experiences shape your current role in AI? And what advice can you give to students looking to enter the field? Thank you.
I can take a stab at this. So I think early in my career, I just said yes to any and all opportunities, to be honest. Sometimes they were internships that maybe I was like, I wasn't so jazzed about, but I ultimately learned something from them. So being open to everything that comes your way, especially as an intern. And I'm going to say something that I struggled to take advice when I was younger, but just start somewhere. I think sometimes like when you're a student, you're like, I want to get like the perfect job or the perfect internship, and just start somewhere, because from there you'll build and then you'll pivot and you'll at least you're getting started, right? And you'll figure out, oh, that's not for me. So just get started somewhere, start doing some project, be open to anything, any projects that come your desk, because that grows your knowledge of what you like, what you don't like, and what you want to pursue.
I have a tiny Charizard to add, or tiny Charmander to add to the Charizard that was Josie's phenomenal overarching point there. I would really recommend when it comes to projects, right? Because your project, think of that as your resume. Think of your GitHub as your resume, right? Really, it's your practical application demonstration. Just do stuff that you love. Like when you're focusing on things that you are going to build, you might look and say, oh, well, the world really cares about X right now, so I better do that. I would strongly challenge that mindset. And I would instead encourage you to think about, what do you really love? What could you build that you would truly be so excited to do? Because here's the thing, you're going to find other people who are excited to do those things too. And you're going to build those things too. And this isn't just a commentary for the entrepreneurs in this group. This is a commentary for everyone, whether you want to work for yourself or you want to be part of a massive corporation. AI is not just one little industry anymore. It is every industry. And so your opportunity set is only going to grow by fractals every single day that goes by. So build stuff that you love, in industries and spaces that you are so excited for, and your passion will carry you much further than your knowledge ever might. That was true of my early career. I'll say that from my own experience.
Did anyone else want to add to the question, or else we can move on to the next question? Sky?
Hi, thank you for your time. I'm currently a sophomore at USC and I'm an Intel and Cyber Ops major. And I was wondering if any of the panelists have any insight on what their early experiences looked like if you were a student who didn't really know what specific field you wanted to go into. I'm also an ROTC, which means I'll have like a commitment after college. And I was wondering if you have any insight on if I'm unsure what direction to go to in the like vast genre of technology and what kind of opportunities I should be looking for or people I should be reaching out to if I'm not too sure what particular career path that I want.
Sky, I'm going to shamelessly plug the MBB program because the veterans there with your ROTC commitment are potentially going to be a really powerful insight. And when it comes to public sector, specifically military, with CyberSec, you don't get bigger application than that. So just something that would be a one minor plug.
Thank you. We have another question from Ming Ming. If you can unmute and ask your question.
Hi, so thank you so much, all of the panelists, for sharing your insights. And my question is kind of a follow-up on the projects that we can put on our resume to land on a maybe an internship or a job of AI, ML, these kind of things. But I kind of heard that this kind of jobs are looking for like PhD students who have like research experience. So I have my question is, would a personal project, maybe I follow the instruction, I find some personal project on GitHub or Udemy, would that count? Would that like, yeah, so that's the question. Yeah.
One thing that you could explore, you mentioned about like a lot of employers are looking for, a PhD with, a couple dozen years of experience. You don't have that. And if you do have some experience and have some projects on GitHub, maybe you just turn the question around and explain to yourself, convince yourself like, hey, here's why my project is sufficient. I don't have 24 years of experience. Nobody's expecting you to. You're an undergrad. But what it does tell you are the following three things. The project that I did, I can take initiative. I can deploy some new, concept that you may not have, done. And I had to work with a couple other developers here on campus to get it done. So I collaborate well. There are ways that you can frame it and explain why you genuinely feel like it's sufficient. I would take that approach. Nobody's expecting an undergrad to, have more experience or have done more projects than somebody that has a PhD. And it's easy when we're in your shoes right now to feel like you're kind of like pushing against that weight. On the other side of it, I can tell you that's not the expectation. That's not our expectation of an undergrad, and just kind of being comfortable with what you have done and explaining like, hey, here's where I took initiative, here's where I worked with other people, I'm able to communicate it clearly, as some of our panelists have mentioned. That'll be good to get that dialogue going, I think.
Thank you. I hope, Ming Ming, that answers your question. We have another question from Bowen.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm in the car
Yeah,
actually.
we can hear you.
Okay, great, awesome. Thank you so much. It's so awesome, like hearing all your insights. So now I'm gonna graduate so like this December, and I'm majoring in AI. So like very interested in all this talk, and so I want to ask how different it is from like the school machine learning and AI course to the industrial AI like real project, because like for me my background is now I'm studying AI, and my undergrad I was building a lot of different tech stacks like building games and building mobile apps and yeah, full stack web development. And now I'm also interning in a company, doing basically software engineer job. But I feel like AI is more interesting to me, so I focus more on my side projects and my deep learning project now. So yeah, I'm just wondering like how different it would be. So for me to better prepare for my graduation and like the real AI career for me. Yeah, thank you so much.
I think for me, it's kind of like when you get your driver's license, like getting that is just the start of when you really learn how to drive. And I think like USC provides a really great foundation to jump off of. Um, Machine learning in production, machine learning in the wild is a little different just because there's more challenges that you involve and there's different ways of connecting it, which I think is kind of the main focus that my company struggles with is how do we connect these new AI systems with a lot of our old like legacy systems. So I think that and some of the other challenges are more different than what you would encounter, which is a lot of like the fun, like how do we build this crazy machine learning model. I also think it kind of comes back to like the business question of does this drive value today? My firm is not a firm like Google, or it's not a firm, like Meta, which is trying to pioneer AI technologies. A lot of the technologies that we have to be applicable to like ITAR and a lot of like military, as well as it has to be useful like day one. There's no like this can be useful 10 years from now. It has to provide value now. So those are a lot of the differences that I think I was a little bit unprepared for exiting USC.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Ming Ming, did you have another question? If not, I just wanted to remind everyone that you can ask your questions in chat. If we don't have any more questions, we can move into the breakout rooms. Um, so we will be concluding our webinar here before going into the breakout room. So thank you everyone for joining. And thank you to our wonderful panelists for your wonderful insight. I do have something up on the screen right now with industry insights and the other recruiting based events that are coming up from career centers. So feel free to check them out. And shortly, we're gonna have breakout rooms. So if you wanted to join and talk one to one, have a more personalized connection with any of our panelists, please feel free to join. Yeah, so that's goodbye from me. Yeah. Hello, Brad. Thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, I was happy to join. Yeah, I didn't know if we were coming back here to the main room or if we're kind of done with the session, but yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think we're done with the session. But yeah, thank you again for
Sounds good.
joining. Have a great rest of your evening.
Alrighty, bye.
Bye. Hello, John. Thank you so much for joining today.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been great. No surprise, but it was really awesome breakout rooms.
Oh, okay. I'm glad. Yeah, I was a little scared if people were gonna like show up, but yeah, I'm glad there was like a decent amount of people showing up.
Yeah, I hope Zujita had like a chance to answer enough questions. Like everybody ran in there. She's amazing. And Christopher, I
Yeah,
think they had their rooms like blasted, filled up immediately. It was awesome.
yeah,
Definitely not, but it was a
they had
great
to
time.
end
That
it
was fun.
Yeah, but we don't have anything else in the main room. Thank you so much to everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your evening. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great night, folks.
All right. See you.
Thanks.